Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the English Daily Book Summary YouTube channel. In order to not stop learning, listen to an English book summary every day for free.
Pia Callison, Live More, Think Less. Overcoming Depression and Sadness with Metacognitive Therapy. You wake up in the morning, and there it is again, that nagging worry from yesterday. Before you know it, you're turning it over in your mind, examining every angle, convinced that if you think about it long enough, you'll find the answer. Sound similar? For decades, we've been told depression is primarily a chemical imbalance requiring medication, that our brains are somehow broken. But emerging research points to something else. The true cause of our suffering is our relationship with thinking. Studies in metacognitive therapy reveal something startling. The key difference between those who develop depression and those who don't are, in fact, mental habits that can be learned. By learning to recognize rumination patterns and developing practical techniques to shift your attention, you can transform your relationship with your mind. The aim isn't forced positivity, but freeing yourself from overthinking and engaging more directly with life. Ready to reclaim your mental freedom? Let's begin. The architecture of depressive thinking. What if depression isn't something that happens to you, but something you unknowingly create through your own thought patterns? What if the key to overcoming your problems isn't figuring them out, but rather thinking about them less? These questions form the foundation of metacognitive therapy, or MCT, research, which has uncovered a new perspective on depression. According to this approach, depression isn't something that randomly descends upon you from the outside. Rather, you provoke it yourself through specific thought patterns. Fortunately, this means that you can also fight it. Research shows that while everyone faces crises and negative emotions, only some people become depressed. Why is that? It's due to differences in how we manage our thoughts. Let's take a closer look at thoughts. The self-regulatory executive function model describes how the mind operates on 3 distinct levels. The lower level consists of the constant stream of mental events that automatically happen moment by moment. Mental visualizations, feelings, thoughts, and memories. You don't have much control over this level. Above this is the middle strategic level. This is where you choose how to handle your thoughts, deciding, for example, whether to keep thinking about something or to stop. The uppermost layer is the metacognitive level. This consists of your beliefs about thinking itself. Metacognitive thoughts can be positive thoughts, such as, worrying helps me cope, or negative thoughts, such as, I can't control my thinking. Metacognitive therapy states that depression happens when we rely too heavily on particular thinking strategies at the middle level. And this happens because of mistaken beliefs we have about thinking itself, the upper metacognitive level. In a nutshell, when we come to believe the wrong things about the mind, we end up using strategies that don't work, or at least not as well as we think. Next, let's look at what exactly these flawed strategies are and how they often go wrong. The 4 horsemen of depression. The first and perhaps most ruinous strategy is rumination. Think of rumination as getting stuck in a loop of thoughts. It's not just thinking about something, but repeatedly going over and over the same thoughts again and again. What went wrong? Why did that happen? The author, Pia Callison, compares rumination to a train of thought that you can't seem to get off. Consider a musician who receives a harsh review. They initially feel disappointed, naturally, but then they spend hours each day replaying the critic's words, analyzing every performance detail, questioning their talent, and imagining the judgments of the audience. Within weeks, they're sleeping poorly, avoiding practice, and getting depressed. Meanwhile, their bandmate, who received similar criticism, felt the initial sting but responded differently. They limited their reflection time, focused on upcoming performances, and maintained their regular routines, so avoiding the depressive spiral. The second flawed strategy is worry. Worry is similar to rumination, but it's more about the future. It often focuses on hypothetical scenarios and what might go wrong. While it's normal to worry sometimes, worrying becomes excessive when we get so caught up in imagining bad things that could happen that we make life worse for ourselves in the present. The third strategy, monitoring behavior, refers to the habit of obsessively checking in with yourself, particularly concerning your mood and well-being. While it's healthy to notice your feelings, it can become problematic when this checking becomes excessive and a trigger for feeling worse. For example, frequently asking yourself, "How am I doing now?" can actually lead you to more rumination and keep your focus on negative things. It's like constantly taking your emotional temperature, with every minor change becoming a cause for concern. The last of the 4 flawed strategies, inappropriate coping behavior, is more of an umbrella category. These are things you do to try and avoid unpleasant thoughts and feelings that, unfortunately, make things worse in the long run. This can include suppressing thoughts and feelings. Paradoxically, the more you exert yourself to avoid negative thoughts, the more they tend to occupy your mind. It can also include getting angry with or blaming yourself for having feelings. This strategy leads to further negative thoughts and self-blame. Another inappropriate strategy is dulling your feelings with drugs or alcohol, which, while it can bring relief, is only temporary and may lead to more negative thoughts in the long run. Together, when these 4 strategies come to dominate, they make up what metacognitive therapists call the cognitive attention syndrome, or CAS, the real cause of depression. By becoming aware of rumination patterns and learning to limit your engagement with troubling thoughts, you can keep yourself from becoming depressed even during life's difficult moments. The beliefs behind it all. So what is it that keeps us using these ineffective strategies? As we discussed earlier, the other problematic factor is metacognitive beliefs, beliefs about thinking. Let's look at a few. Some depressed individuals lack awareness of their rumination. They see hours spent mentally reviewing problems as normal rather than harmful overthinking. Some believe that rumination happens to them rather than a process carried out by them. That is, they think rumination is completely out of their control. And others believe that, in fact, rumination works. They think that extensive analysis is what they need to solve their problems. These beliefs about thinking serve as a kind of hidden scaffolding of depression, keeping us stuck. Consider Steve, who struggled with his adult son's constant requests for money. He spent hours each day deliberating whether giving him money was helpful or harmful. He monitored his activities obsessively and eventually withdrew from social activities as his mood deteriorated. His breakthrough came when he realized he needed to limit his rumination. He decided to set aside 1 hour per day when he was allowed to think about the issue. The rest of the day, he would direct his attention elsewhere. By limiting rumination to 1 hour daily, his energy returned and he found it easier to set boundaries. The research supporting metacognitive therapy is impressive. Studies show a 70 to 80% recovery rate for depression and anxiety, significantly higher than traditional therapy's success rate of 50%. Research across multiple countries confirms these results hold both short and long term. Recovery through metacognitive therapy follows 5 steps: becoming aware of rumination, believing you can control it, abandoning the notion that rumination leads to solutions, taking action regardless of motivation, and accepting that thoughts are normal, not evidence of biological defects. Your goal isn't to eliminate your rumination entirely, but rather to limit its dominance. Just as wounds heal best when they're not constantly picked at, your mind recovers naturally when you allow your thoughts to flow without excessive engagement. Trigger thoughts. Your brain generates up to 70,000 thoughts daily. But these thoughts aren't all created equal. You can become trapped in cycles of rumination after experiencing what therapists call trigger thoughts. Think of your mind as a television with countless channels. Trigger thoughts, those first thoughts that spark emotional reactions, are the ones that tend to keep you watching for hours, analyzing every scene. Sad trigger thoughts such as, "Why am I so bad at this?" or anxious ones like, "What if I fail again?" become problematic when you believe you have to watch the full program. While you can't control what shows up on your mental screen, you can decide to change the channel. Instead of trying to resolve trigger thoughts through analysis, you can switch to more effective strategies, like deliberately redirecting your attention or specific time limits for worry. Maya, a marketing executive, received tough criticism during a client presentation. Initially disappointed, she found herself replaying the meeting constantly, analyzing every word. The more she analyzed, the worse she felt. During therapy, Maya learned to identify her primary trigger thought. "This proves I don't belong in this role." Instead of watching this mental program on repeat, she now practices a new response. When the thought appears, she acknowledges it. "There's that thought again," and deliberately switches to something else. She designates just 20 minutes each evening for worry time, and outside this window, she practices immersing herself in present moment tasks. 3 months on, Maya still experiences trigger thoughts, but she doesn't get caught up as much. By limiting her rumination, her energy has returned, allowing her to implement practical solutions rather than being stuck watching reruns. An anti-rumination dojo. We've looked at the method of creating dedicated worry time. Now let's look at some other effective strategies. One powerful technique is attention training, which helps you regain control over your mind by deliberately directing your focus. Here's how it works. First, find somewhere you can hear multiple sounds simultaneously. Perhaps the soft patter of rain on a window and the sounds of traffic in the distance. Then, try focusing exclusively on just one of the sounds. After around 10 seconds, shift your attention to another. This trains your ability to choose where your attention goes. As you progress, you can quicken these transitions to just 2 to 4 seconds per sound. Eventually, practice dividing your attention equally across all sounds simultaneously. Unlike many forms of meditation, which may increase internal focus, this training specifically strengthens your ability to direct attention outward, away from rumination. When Callison's clients struggle with this exercise, she sometimes uses a practical demonstration. She hands them a dry erase marker and asks them to write the thoughts that are troubling them on the window. First, they focus completely on the written thoughts, noticing how the outside world becomes blurry. Then, they deliberately shift focus to what's beyond the window: trees, buildings, and passing cars. The thoughts don't disappear, but they become less distinct as attention moves elsewhere. Another strategy is developing the capacity to mindfully let go of your thoughts without engaging, like clouds drifting by. To practice this, start by visualizing, say, a butterfly. picture it in detail: its body shape, its wings, its coloration. Now, without trying to control the image, simply observe. What happens naturally in your mind's eye? The butterfly might hover, fly away, or transform. But you're just watching, not directing. This same approach works with troubling thoughts. Rather than analyzing, why am I so anxious? You can simply notice the thought and let it move through your mind without grabbing onto it. Callison suggests alternating between 2 minutes of deliberate rumination and 2 minutes of detached observation. Most of her clients report feeling significantly different during these states: more tension and sadness while ruminating, and more ease and flow during detachment. For some especially heavy ruminators, success comes particularly gradually. Starting with just 1 hour of detached mindfulness daily, then adding an additional hour each day can help build the mental muscle needed for longer periods. Step by step, by observing thoughts without engaging them, you can learn to avoid getting caught up in rumination. You are not your thoughts. Do you consider yourself an analytical person? Perhaps an overthinker? Many people view analytical thinking as an intrinsic part of who they are, but excessive rumination is actually a learned behavior. As we've seen, spending too much time on rumination can keep us stuck in life and even spiral into depression. There's a widespread belief that rumination leads to breakthroughs and solutions, but therapeutic evidence suggests otherwise. Consider the artist who came to Callison for therapy, believing his daily contemplation, sometimes lasting nearly half the day, was the wellspring of his artistic inspiration. Yet, he had to admit it also seemed to worsen his depression. In metacognitive therapy, he experimented with limiting his creative thinking to a scheduled 2-hour session. To his surprise, he discovered that truly valuable ideas came to him during this time without his previous level of effort. His artistic ability remained intact while his depression lifted. Many similar misconceptions keep people trapped in rumination cycles. Some believe self-criticism will minimize future mistakes, even though we inevitably make errors, regardless of how much we berate ourselves. Other people think positive rumination builds self-esteem, yet mantras and positive self-talk typically offer short-lived benefits. Perhaps most concerning is the belief that rumination is a person's core identity, that without these deep thoughts, they'd lose themselves entirely. Yet, when weighing rumination's perceived benefits against its cost, most people discover the costs are far greater. While rumination might provide some insight or sense of preparation, the price paid is steep. Disrupted sleep, damaged self-esteem, sadness, fatigue, and isolation. Leif's story illustrates this. From adolescence, he struggled with morbid thoughts about death that he believed required careful working through. These thoughts consumed him, creating what he described as a living hell, a state where he wasn't truly living, just existing. The turning point came when metacognitive therapy introduced him to a revolutionary concept. He didn't have to engage with these thoughts at all. Initially skeptical, Leif discovered he could let thoughts come and go without them spoiling his day. He learned to observe them briefly before releasing them. The result was freedom from depression, greater emotional resources, and improved self-esteem. Leif's dark thoughts still arrive from time to time, but he no longer languishes or feels trapped in them. He simply acknowledges them and continues living his life. The main takeaway of this Blink to Live More, Think Less by Pia Callison is that depression stems from how you relate to your thoughts. Metacognitive therapy reveals that flawed mental strategies like rumination, getting stuck in mental loops, are the true culprit. and that these stem from mistaken beliefs about thinking. While you can't control what thoughts appear, you can control whether you engage with them. By limiting rumination to specific times, training your attention outward, and practicing detached mindfulness, you can break free from depression's grip. Don't fight your thoughts. Gently acknowledge them and redirect your focus. Before long, you'll be feeling a whole lot lighter. Okay, that's it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it. Please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. See you in the next Blink.